Welcome to Open Marketing, and today we are talking about storytelling. I'm going to be sharing with you about just storytelling in general, what it is, how to do it, but I'm also going to be talking with you about how to properly package it so you're actually telling the right story in the right way. All right. Now, you've probably heard about the importance of storytelling, right? Because all of us love a good story. And the same is true, especially on social media. People like good stories. People love stories that make them laugh, that make them cry, that leave them in shock, that surprise them. We all like stories, but you want to make sure that you're telling the right story. Because some people make the mistake of telling a story that really no one cares about. And if it's a story that nobody cares about, it's a story that isn't valuable, right? So when you think about the stories that you want to tell, figure out how can this story bring value to the listener. Okay. So when you think about a valuable story, think about, again, just your ideal audience, your ideal client. Think about where they are and what lesson they need to know and hear about. Okay. And on top of that, especially as a real estate agent, you're a personal brand. So you should be able to tell stories from your past clients. Talk about the funny things that have happened before a closing. Talk about the crazy situations that have happened from inspections and red tape and things of that nature. Talk about just the feel-good stories of the person that thought they wouldn't be able to buy a house, but you helped make it happen. These are the types of stories that people want to hear, but you have to be able to share the story. All right. And there's usually, all stories start with an arc. Okay. All stories start with an arc, meaning that there's a beginning, there's a rise, climax, and then basically there's a fall off, and then we're done with the story. But the way in which you tell the story really does matter. The way you tell the story matters, because if you get to the punchline, if you get to the climax of the story too quick, then it doesn't seem as interesting. But if you really walk your listener through, this is how it began, this is what I dealt with, and then at the top, we made it, and then they went off and had a great life, right? Now, that story that once was told very simply becomes effective. I'm going to show you an example. I'll be a real estate agent for 2 seconds. I'm going to tell a story about, a client that I had, and they didn't have enough money to buy a house, or they didn't think they could do it, and I knew some people and pulled some strings. The first version of this story is going to be quick, to the point. It's not really going to be that interesting, but then I'm going to redo the story, but then I'm going to really add sauce to it, so that way it's engaging. Okay, so watch this. So I was working with a client about 10 years ago, and they really didn't have any money, but I was able to make a few phone calls to a friend of mine, and he's a mortgage lender, and he basically was able to move some numbers around, make it happen. We found a property for them, and then they were happy. That's version one. Okay, that's version one. That wasn't very interesting. That wasn't really there was no emotion. I wasn't able to really pull you in to the story to make it feel like you were there. But this is the second version of that. About 10 years ago, I had this family that they were looking to buy a house. And what was really interesting about this family was I could tell that they really had a desire to own a home, that they had a desire to own the home, but they just, for whatever reason, they didn't have the resources in order to make it happen. And I just knew from the bottom of my heart that there was a way that we could make it happen. And there were plenty of days in which, while I was working with this family, with numerous phone calls and, Zoom calls and everything of the sort, that it was possible to get them into a home. And I was super determined, and I was looking, different areas, hitting up different people, different resources that I have in order to find them the property first. Thankfully, I also had some connections with some people in some pretty good places with a mortgage lender. And essentially, what the mortgage lender was able to do, and accompanied with just some of my own efforts in finding them a property, we were able to work their numbers to where it worked for them. And I remember that phone call when I was actually able to tell them that they were able to purchase a home, that they got the pre-approval, and just every step of the way, to be able to watch this family go from a point of disbelief in their ability to buy a home to their ability to now basically have the keys at the closing table is truly remarkable. And I'm just really thankful to be a part of that type of process. Now, did you see the difference? Did you feel the difference in the way in which I was able to tell the story? Now, I may have mixed some details up, and that's my apologies, but I want you to just get the point that it really does matter about the way you tell the story. Both stories are the same. There's a family that wasn't able to buy a house, but through some creative thinking and creative work, we were able to get them a house. But when you're able to really bring your audience into the situation where they now have an emotional investment, where they are on the cliff trying to figure out, well, what happens? That's a good story. So when you think about the way in which you're telling your story, it may take you a couple extra seconds, but try to figure out how to put your audience, how to put your viewer and your listener on just this arc of, okay, here's the beginning, here's the problem, here's how we're working through a solution. It seems unlikely, but we're making it. Climax, we win, and then fall off into the sunset. These are the types of things I want you to think about when you think about your storytelling in your content. Okay, and again, there's different ways. Don't focus so much on the time, but just make sure you're being very effective. All right, so that's what I mean when I say we're talking about storytelling in terms of telling the right story, telling it the right way. Okay, make sure that you're telling your stories in a way that actually matters to your people. Now, when you're thinking about packaging of the story, okay, when you're thinking about packaging of the story, all stories need to have a lesson. All stories need to have a lesson. So what does that mean? This looks like where before you actually just jump into the story, you're actually giving the listener or the viewer a reason to listen, right? You're giving them a reason. You're letting them know why whatever the lesson is important to their life, right? I'll give you another example, all right? I'll use the same story that I used before, but I'm going to package them differently. About 10 years ago, I was able to help this family. They didn't think that they had the ability to buy a home. And through some creative work between myself and my mortgage lender, we worked tirelessly for months on trying to find them a property, trying to make sure that they had their finances in order and everything like that. And through a lot of creative work, we were able to make it happen. And so the point of this story is that you really want to believe even when it doesn't make sense. Here's the second version. You should know that even when you may not feel like you can afford the house, it's still possible. The reason being, about 10 years ago, I was working with a family and they were in the same position you are, where they felt like they didn't have the money, they didn't have the resources, but because of the work between myself, my mortgage lender, and just a lot of tireless work, we were able to get them into the home that they deserved. Do you notice the difference in the way in which I packaged the two? Now, I did shorten each of the stories just for sake of the example, but when you think about the packaging of the story, the first version, I just jumped right into the story. Now, that may still help and get some people depending on the type of content, but when you're thinking about just a great universal way to get people to listen to your story in a way that is going to allow them to engage with you, you want to make sure that you're presenting the lesson up front, because in the second version, I led with, you should know that even if you feel like you don't have the money to buy your house, it's still possible. That is a lesson that is going to hook whoever that is very quickly. And for somebody that even may have the money, or they may not be like on the cusp in that in between, I think I have enough money, but maybe I don't, that's going to hook them too, to where now that you're going to have more people wanting to listen to the story. And ultimately, if you get more people to listen to your stories, and again, they don't have to all be feel-good stories. You can talk about the failures, talk about the bad times and everything like that. But when you combine telling the right story, right, finding the right stories with the right lessons, with the right packaging for these stories, you are going to find yourself building an audience just because more people are going to want to hear about what it's like working with you. Because ultimately, what you are subconsciously communicating is, hey, this is the experience of people that work with me. And yes, there are some wins. Yes, there are some losses. But at the end of the day, number one, I'm transparent. Number two, I work my butt off for my clients. And at the end of the day, I can tell you, as someone that's not even a real estate agent, that is all we want. For the rationally sane people out there, okay, and that's me putting it kindly, for the rationally sane people out there, we know that not everything in a real estate deal is going to go perfect. But what we do appreciate are the agents that can be transparent, that can be honest, and the agents that really go above and beyond and work hard. So if you're able to tell stories that subconsciously communicate the type of agent that you are, you're going to find yourself with way more deals. And again, like I always say, that's the whole point of this thing. So think about telling stories in your content. Think about telling stories in your reel, telling more stories on your podcast, on your YouTube channel, whatever medium. But please try to incorporate stories. Okay. So I hope that this was helpful to you. If you want help with this, be sure to leave me a comment below. If you have any questions or anything like that, please let me know. You can send me an email at info@10-media.com. I would love to help you out. Also, if you know any other ambitious real estate agents that want help with their digital marketing and they just want help building their social media platform or their personal brand, I'd love to help. Please point them to Open Marketing. I hope that you're getting value out of this. So please definitely leave a review and just tell as many people as you want, because I really want to fill this space up, this mastermind up, so that way, again, more real estate agents have the confidence that they need to go help more people. Because ultimately, for me, that's what it's all about. It's me giving you the tools that I have that allows you to go help more people. So I hope that you appreciated this. Again, go tell stories this month. All right. I'll see you guys next month.